Hey, what's going on, guys? What's happening YouTube? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about a recent study that found that over half of workers, 54% of workers, actually prefer working in the office to working at home. And this is interesting because it runs counter to the narrative that work from home, remote work is this amazing thing. Everybody loves it. 100% of people want to do it. We should make it even more widespread. It should be the way going forward. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Now, I would love to hear from you guys. Do you like remote work? Do you dislike remote work? And what is your reasons? Well, one thing that I think is interesting, I think the number one reason people like remote work and the biggest complaint about going into the office that I hear from people is commuting time. The average commuting time is, depending on the city, somewhere between 23 minutes and 28 minutes. But I see a lot of people who say, have an hour-long commute to work. I don't think that's uncommon. In my city of Chicago, if you live in the Chicago suburbs and you commute into the city, you're probably looking at 45 minutes to an hour. Over the course of a week, that's 2 hours each day. So that's 10 hours a week. That's 40 hours a month. That's essentially like doing an entire extra 40-hour work week every single week just during commuting. And, when I was younger, I actually used to commute into the city. And I will say there were days that by the time I got downtown and was walking into work, I already felt like I had a whole day, I already felt like I'd had a whole full day of activity and I was already exhausted. If you're spending 2 hours a day commuting, think about all the things that you can't do, or think about all of the, great things that you could do if you didn't have to waste that 2 hours. You could prepare a good, healthy meal for yourself. You could work out. You could spend time with your kids. You could start a business on the side. So I get why people dislike commuting, but I think the same person could either like or dislike office work, depending on what that commute is. The guy who has a 2-hour daily commute, he's most likely going to hate working in the office because of that commute. That same guy may actually prefer working in the office if you only had a 5 or 10 minute commute to work, or even, the average 20, 23 minute commute to work. This study that we're going to be referencing today comes from a website called studyfinds.org. Kind of a cool website. You guys might find it interesting. They have categories like family, health, science, society, environment, politics, business news, workplace news, weird studies. If you are a content creator, this is a great place to go for content ideas. And if you are a business or a marketer, this can also be a helpful tool for your marketing. Let's just say, for example, you sell blue light glasses that kind of help protect your eyes if you spend a lot of time in front of a computer screen. I can almost guarantee you that you can find a study on here about how damaging computer screens are to the eyes, or how blue light glasses help, and you can kind of use these things in your marketing. Just kind of a side note here, I will link to the website and link to this article as well. So let's think about why might some people not like remote work. Well, my parents live in a condo a couple cities over from me, and their condo has terrible internet. They also can't get better internet because you're not allowed to get your own internet. Like your internet is included in your rent. There's one service that's hooked up to your building, and you can't choose different packages. Basically, you pay your association fee, and that gets you whatever internet speed that they're giving you. I mean, it's an unusable internet. Like, even if I have to do a brief activity over there or show my dad how to do something on a computer, it's painful to do. I could never work remotely or never work from home with their internet. So that's one reason. Some people find it hard to tune out and separate themselves from their workplace. A lot of people like that disconnect of I'm leaving the office and now I'm at home. A lot of people have a hard time shutting that off when they're working from home and living out of their home. A lot of younger people have roommates. Maybe you're fresh out of college, you got your first professional job, but your roommate is bartending and gets home at 4 a.m. and is bringing people back to the house. And is still partying at 9 a.m. when you wake up and got to hop on a conference call. There is a whole host of reasons why people might not like working from home. Even back during the height of the pandemic, there was a study put out, I believe it was by Microsoft, and it actually found that 70 or 80% of Gen Z individuals didn't like remote work. Why? Because when you're, one thing that I found when I got my first professional job in an office, it was really kind of a mind fuck. It was very odd that, previously having worked in restaurants, retail, etc., you're treated as a child. If you're 1 minute late, you're written up. You better be back from your lunch break at exactly 30 minutes. They tell you when to take lunch. It was really weird being in an office environment, a first professional job where you're actually kind of treated like an adult. And, if you want to take an hour and a half lunch, take an hour and a half lunch as long as your work gets done. If you want to come in at 9:30 and leave at 5:30 instead of coming in and leaving at 5, most professional jobs allow for that. But it was kind of a weird thing. And I could see, I was able to kind of see what my coworkers are doing and kind of mimic kind of the behaviors of people around me and kind of see what the culture was. If you're working remotely, it's very alone. You don't necessarily get that experience. A lot of Gen Z individuals also found that they weren't able to get a mentor. They weren't able to get, any FaceTime with their boss or manager or the CEO. And they were kind of looking for those opportunities. Also, you get out of college, maybe your friends are from different cities. A lot of people like that social aspect, especially if you're single. It's very easy to go days, even weeks at a time without leaving, your house, without talking to another individual. A buddy of mine who's got a wife and kids even said, sometimes I got to remind myself to go outside. He said, my wife will get home from work and she'll say, man, it's hot outside. And I'll be like, shit, man, I haven't been outside in 3 days. So whole host of reasons why people may not like working from home and actually kind of crave working in the office, actually enjoy working in the office. And I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent before we get into this study, but one thing that I kind of find interesting. So you guys know the whole Elon Musk Twitter deal looks like it's going to be going through. Initially, it was reported it may go through as soon as Friday. Now Elon's saying, look, everything's not quite that finalized. So nothing's definitive quite yet, but one thing that's interesting is a lot of people who are on the left, obviously Twitter favors things on the left, favors people on the left, tends to give the left a lot more leeway. A lot of people on the left are like, we can't have Elon Musk, we can't have a private individual owning Twitter. They're going to be able to shape dialogue and censor information and spread misinformation. And it's like, what do you think Twitter's been doing all along for the past 10 or 15 years? Twitter suspends people for saying certain things and not for saying other things. There's even things that are factually true that have gotten people suspended off of Twitter. If anything, I think Elon Musk is probably a gentleman who's going to be, kind of open free speech for all, and that should be good for everybody. It's, if you want to be somebody who censors information and wants to try to control narratives and shape people's opinions, you probably don't like this, but if you want everybody to have access to any and all information and be able to decide issues for themselves, I think Elon Musk buying Twitter is probably a good thing. But here's where I'm going with this. When it comes to this remote work topic, if you see what people are saying on Twitter, if you see what people are saying on Reddit, if you read a lot of media articles, you would think that 100% of people want remote work. It's not up for debate. Remote work is the best way of doing things. And that's kind of because, people on Twitter and Reddit tend to be very into tech. A lot of times they kind of tend to be loners, antisocial. And so, no surprise that they don't want to be around coworkers. They don't want to have to make small talk. They don't want to have to interact with other people. But when you actually look at the real world, we see that that's not necessarily the case, to the point where not only half, even more than half of the people, according to this study, prefer working in an office. One caveat I will say is a lot of you can find a study saying two very different things, right? I'm sure we could find another study saying 70% of people prefer remote work and want to work from home. It's also important how you ask these questions. We did a video the other day that said 60% of Americans are living check to check. What the article never stated is, how are we actually defining check to check? Does check to check mean anybody who basically doesn't have excess income at the end of a pay period? And is that the only way that we're defining it? Because there could be a guy earning $100,000 a year, lives a very luxurious lifestyle. At the end of the month, he has $3,000 extra in disposable income, and he drops it into a mutual fund like VTSAX. Technically, according to that definition, he's living check to check, but he's also putting $3,000 a month into a mutual fund and living a very luxurious lifestyle. I think when a lot of us hear the word check to check, we think of the single mom who's only buying necessities, and the check runs out right as the next pay period is coming. Or, a middle-class family, 2 or 3 kids, they're buying the bare necessities, they're being very frugal, and again, they're just running out of money right as the next pay period's coming. There's no cushion. These are very different definitions, but the article doesn't necessarily lay out, what check to check actually means. But all that rambling aside, here we are 10 minutes in. We're finally getting into the story. So again, this one comes to us from studyfinds.org, and the article is titled Office Suite Office. Most people don't actually want to spend the next 10 years working from their couches, survey shows. So let's hop in here. Is remote working really the future of the office? Over half of office workers, 54%, whose jobs don't offer a hybrid schedule, actually prefer coming into the office every day. The findings of a study of 2,000 office workers provides a look into what the return to the office would look like for U.S.-based workers, and found that 3/4 actually enjoy working from their company office at 76%. Most respondents have had some time working at home over the last 3 years, 69%. And say that their physical surroundings impact their productivity and energy levels while working, 72%. This provides insight into why a workplace setting continues to be important for employees and not just for collaboration purposes. Conducted by OnePoll on behalf of Industrious, the survey also found that office employees prefer to utilize the office when hosting client meetings, 86%, and collaborations with teams, 62%. Surprisingly, doing individual work when they need a private space, 59%, or creative work, 57%, were also high on the list of tasks workers prefer doing in an office setting. So, I think a lot of people might think, well, yeah, if you're hosting a client meeting or doing some type of group activity, it makes more sense to be in the office. Whereas you might think that people would prefer working at home. They might be able to focus better or have less distractions. They actually found that 59% of people doing individual work would prefer being in an office, and 57 people doing creative work. The only thing I can imagine is maybe home has too many distractions. I hear a lot of people say things like, oh, I hate being in the office. The office manager, Linda's always trying to chat me up about, Gilmore Girls or whatever it may be. But in reality, I think oftentimes there's a lot of distractions at home. I like to work out. I'd love to work out at home and not have to drive to the gym. But I find when I'm at home, I'm going to play on my phone. I'll talk to my girlfriend. I'll play with my dog. Buddy stopped by the house. I actually find it easier to focus when I actually just go to the gym and I'm away from all the distractions. Back into the article, it says there's a lot being written in the press that makes you think everybody would work at home 5 days a week if given a chance, says Anna Squire-Levine, Chief Commercial Officer at Industrious, in a statement. But what we're seeing is that most people don't actually want to spend the next 10 years working from their couches at home. They want to be in the office a couple days a week. They want to see other people. They want focus, and they want to do that in a place that's close to home. And this is something that I've been saying all along. I think hybrid work is kind of the best of both worlds. Yeah, it's nice to have that freedom and flexibility to be able to do some laundry on your lunchtime, be able to meal prep on your lunchtime, not have to get clothes ready for 5 days a week, not have to do dry cleaning, not having to commute every day to work. But I think there's also benefits to being in office, right? You have a better rapport with your coworkers. It's better for, I know the whole company culture or office culture is kind of cringe to a lot of people, but it is better for office culture, for group activities and brainstorming and creativity. I think it can be better. Doesn't mean you have to be in the office 5 days a week or every day of the month. But being in the office at least a couple days a week, I do think there's benefits to that. And I think it also offers some variety, right? You appreciate working from home a little bit more when there are some days that you go into the office. It gives you kind of a change of spaces as well. Back into the office, get out of my chair. Office workers value their office for aspects they don't have at home, such as tech equipment like printers and scanners, 31%, their colleagues or coworkers, 26%, and their work computer setup, 23%. If you guys have ever worked on dual monitors and then had to go back to a single monitor, it's fucking terrible. Interestingly, even with hybrid work models, office workers are still serious about their seats, with 70% saying they sit at the same desk or same seat every day. In fact, over half of respondents would speak up if someone took their spot at the office, 54%. Now we're kind of good at getting off into people like having their own chairs and spots at the office, but we'll finish up this article anyways. Those who choose their seats themselves were strategic about sitting close to meeting spaces, 58%, outlets, 53%, and exits, 41%. 68% of the respondents are even likely to go into work early to make sure they get their preferred seat or desk. In open office settings like this, workers make their presence known by telling everybody that's where they're sitting for the day, 45%, keeping their personal items there, 41%, or leaving their computer signed in, 40%. Let's see, we got a little chart here. Maybe I'll use this as a thumbnail. What does this say? 69% have spent some time. Okay, so yeah, maybe I'll use that chart for the thumbnail. The daily commute to the office is still a problem. The findings also shed light on what would make workers more willing to go into an office. Respondents shared that a shorter commute, proximity to retail and lifestyle options, a nice view, and a quote-unquote fun and inspiring environment, a more casual atmosphere, or breaking the routine and confinement of the home may do the trick. The commute in particular seems to be a barrier to returning to the office. 42% of respondents say their commute is over 30 minutes long, and 62% say they would go into the office more if it took less time. So I hadn't read this full study earlier, but that kind of makes sense, right? We kind of talked about how the average commute is 23 to 28 minutes, and how the same person may be more likely to want to work in the office if they didn't have a long commute. What this survey and other recent ones shows is that pushback against going into the office is less about the actual workplace and more about the commute and the additional value add that workplace surroundings bring to people, says Jamie Hadari, co-founder and CEO at Industrious. Offices in walkable areas with grocery stores, gyms, and dining options will most likely become centers of social gathering and activity, especially if they're a short commute away. And this is kind of an interesting part as well. This is kind of taking us off on another little bit of a tangent. But with people out of the office, a lot of coffee shops, restaurants, and bars that rely on office workers for their business are probably going to be going out of business if they haven't gone out of business already. In my city of Chicago, you know, the area where most people work, some people work in River North and on the north side, but generally speaking, kind of the big business district or office area is the, you know, quote unquote Chicago Loop near the train stations. Over the years, that area has gotten more residential buildings and condos, but generally speaking, it still is very much so a business area. And if you go, you know, after 7 o'clock when happy hour is done, or on the weekends, it's kind of a ghost town. It's kind of dead. And the only reason that these businesses, restaurants, bars, etc., exist is to serve office workers. Well, if office workers aren't going into offices, not only is there going to be a huge problem with the commercial real estate, but also a lot of these businesses that rely on people are going to suffer as well. I did a video back during the pandemic about how I think it was like 88% of restaurants in San Francisco had permanently closed. San Francisco and California as a whole are two areas that have kind of hung on to COVID restrictions the longest, that have been the most hesitant to go back into offices. So I can only imagine what the restaurant and bar and kind of coffee shop scene looks like there. Not only was it hit especially hard during the pandemic, but also, you know, the office workers in large part have never returned. We'll see if we got any comments here. If so, we'll read a few comments. Otherwise, we'll wrap this one up. It doesn't look like we have any comments on this article. Actually, do we? No, we don't. Okay, so that's what the survey found. You know, when I see studies like this come out, I'll see a lot of people saying, "Oh, you know, this is propaganda from boomers who want to try to get people back into the office. This is kind of bullshit." You know, I think there's truth to it. I think it makes sense. Even in my personal life, probably about half of my friends say, you know, I'll quit my job before I go back into the office, and I have a number of other friends who you know, may not want to go back in full time, but definitely if they're looking for a job, they want to find a job that is at least hybrid or at least gives them the ability to go back into the office. As always, I would like to hear from you guys. What is your company doing? What are most of your friends and family doing? What is the work environment in your city? And what is your personal preference? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you guys on the next video.